generations of family go head to head on a variety of topics. You got one Gen Zer, Chris. You got one Millennial, Noe. And you got one BBB, the baby boomer from Brooklyn, myself. No matter what the topic may be, you better believe it will be up for debate. All right, I know y'all all see a fourth member of the crew. And this is a very, very auspicious occasion because this is up for debate's first official guest.
Yeah.
Oh, yay.
It's historical, yes.
Historical, yes.
Put the applause in there for an extra 15 seconds or something. It's a big deal.
Just an extra 15?
Yeah.
So, this is, I want to do like a Drink Champs type intro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I agree.
You know, this man is a phenomenon within itself. You know what I'm saying? He is a low-key OG. He does not try to ball out and try to show everybody what he has and what he's done. He lets his work speak for himself, okay? He is, I don't know if you see his scrubs, but he is a doctor, and not just a doctor. He is the doctor, the physician, the internist, a doctor who has studied at Pittsburgh School of Medicine, trained at Harlem Hospital, yes, the Harlem Hospital. He was a chief resident of internal medicine and former chief medical officer of the World Bank. He is currently in DC, where I'm not going to tell y'all because I don't need y'all to go run him down and try to be like, oh, can I get your autograph? No, this is my family. Okay. So he has been in this game for almost 40 years. And he's known me for over 40 years. But then that would be a lie because I'm only 27.
Yeah.
You know. So without further ado, everybody welcome to the debate floor, Dr. Richard O. Kennedy.
Thank you.
So I wanted you to just give a little overview of what you have accomplished in life and your experience as a Black doctor in the United States and within your experience of your Doctors Without Borders abroad.
Okay. It's actually not that much. I'm from Brownsville, Brooklyn. And I think that's important to hear because it tells you you can come from anywhere and be anything as long as you're willing to put in the time. And so, yes, I've been a physician a little over 38 years. As my lovely niece said, I trained at Harlem Hospital. And while I lived in New York, I worked at the World Trade Center with American Express. I worked at Rikers Island. I had my own practice up in the Bronx. And I ran a hypertension clinic for a few years at Harlem Hospital, worked in the emergency room, among other things, and then relocated to a place south of New York and have been here 28 years. I was fortunate enough to get a job at the World Bank. And with that job, I got to see the world and actually got to see medicine practice in Africa and Asia and Latin America, the Caribbean, and Europe. And have done mission work to West Africa, mission work to East Africa. And one of the things that I learned many years ago at Harlem Hospital, I was told at the very beginning. If you train here, you'll be able to go anywhere in the world and practice. And that has been borne out by my life's experiences. I do primary care down close to where Mr. Biden is. And I do acupuncture. I'm also trained in medical acupuncture. I'm into preventive care, preventive health. I'm into educating and informing people, because the more you know as a patient, the better you are to take care of yourself, because you're with yourself 100% of the time. You're with the provider for a very short time. So my job is to give guidance and direction. The patients put in the work. Those who work hard at it succeed. Those who don't. And so that's just a sort of brief summary for me.
You know, you have told us many stories over the years about your experiences abroad and within the United States. But I know there were some unique experiences that you had when you were at Rikers, because you kind of skimmed over that. But I know that was somewhat of a traumatic experience.
Yeah. Traumatic enough that I worked there until I didn't work there anymore. You really want to hear about that?
Yes.
Okay, so I was working at Rikers Island, and actually, so I always say Rikers Island is an interesting place because it's a place where people have been arrested, some who've been sentenced to do time in a state or a federal penitentiary, but they have not found a place for them to go yet. So you'll see many of the Rikers Island residents in street clothes. And, you know, you know, the correction officers are in uniform, the medical doctors and nurses and PAs and nurse practitioners, we're supposed to wear a white coat when we're in the clinic, but you know, when you're not in the clinic, you're in street clothes. Mm-hmm. So this one day I'm in the clinic, and there was a young brother who had he got into a scuffle with someone. Someone hit him hard enough that basically it was a hole in his cheek. And so I was sewing it up, you know, anesthetized it and sewed it up and things of that nature. And while I was in the middle of a stitch, an alarm went off, doors started closing, shutting down, all this. And then the COs came and told me, we need you in the mess hall right now. And I said, well, I'm finished, you know, just let me finish this stitch. Literally, these two brothers picked me up, you know, took the needle out of my hand, carried me over, and you saw as we were running down, I wasn't running, I was being carried down the corridor to the mess hall in the cafeteria, because there was a scuffle that had occurred between a correction officer and an inmate. And the correction officer was down on the ground because they got hit, and the tables, they're all soldered in to the concrete, and so they don't move. So obviously he hit his head. By the time I got there, the EMS was there, the emergency medical services, and they were wheeling him out. The gentleman who was in the scuffle with him, he was nowhere to be found. And then by the time I walked back to the mess hall, there he was in bad shape. And, you know, I was told, you really need to next time when we call an emergency and we need you, you just need to be there. I said, okay. I said, but you have to understand, these are my patients when I'm with them and I need to finish what I'm doing. I said, if it were life or death, yes, I'm on the way. But this was just a scuffle. Again, I didn't know that, but I understand. So, that day, with the strange looks that I got the rest of the day, was the last time I was in Rikers.
That was the strange look from the CEOs.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Very, very, very strange. Very, very strange. But then on a lighter moment in Rikers, I'm walking down the hall one day going to get something to eat. And you have inmates walking in one direction, like I don't know when you guys were in high school and middle school. When you walk down the corridors, people going in one direction, going one way, and people going down the other direction, go the other way. So I'm walking down the hall and, as I'm walking by this inmate and CO, and the guy says, Rich Kennedy. And I looked and it was someone I grew up with. He's now an inmate. And he said, what are you in for? I said, oh, no, I work here. He said, really? What do you do here? And the CO know me. And he said, oh, he's the doc. He says, no effing way, not you. And then he said, don't tell your mama that I'm in here. It was an accident. I'm innocent. I said, yeah, I know. And so I'm trying to walk away, and he says, yo, can you bring in some stuff for me the next time you come? So that was actually funny, really. And of course, because of the work you do, you end up seeing people from all over the New York metropolitan area in there. So it was interesting. Interesting experience. Yes.
Them closing it down is a blessing whenever they do decide.
Prisons in and of itself, there are some people who deserve to be there. There are a lot of them that don't. It's like everywhere else that, we live in a society where people of color are more marked and they end up filling up roles that sometimes don't be there. And because of the issues that we live in and we're living in right now in the societies we're in now, in the time we're in right now in this country. We see this for the, unnecessary deaths of young people at the expense of people who are supposed to be sometimes protecting us.
Yeah.
In terms of just Black men in general and how we view just healthcare in its entirety, I feel like from what I've seen personally, there's not much urgency when it comes to men and getting, yearly checkups and just actually participating in, our health. So as someone who's been actively working on the other side of it, have you seen, or what's been your perception of it from the other side of that?
There is truth to that. I think, and again, this goes back a lot to, in general, because of the disparities that exist in this country, and that it's not that people don't want to go to and seek health care and get general checkups, is that we've been, and I always say this has to do with how men are raised in this country. Men are raised to be independent, strong, work hard. If you're not supposed to show weakness. and it's hard for men to come in and talk about their general health, their well-being. So mental health is a big issue because it means you have to talk to someone and ask someone and tell someone you're having problems. You know, maybe you're anxious, maybe you're sad, maybe you feel like a failure, maybe you feel like you've not succeeded in life, or you're having issues with your partner, you're having issues with your coworker, all of those things. To come and tell somebody that you're having trouble dealing with that takes a lot of courage, because you don't want people to look at you as being weak. And this has a lot to do with the social networks. And probably one of the best examples, most Black men, and this has been borne out in the very few studies that have been done, but most Black men, when they seek help, they will use, if they have a faith, they'll use their faith as their go-to when they're stressed, when they're not unhappy. They'll pray about it. You know, if they get really good, they might actually go to someone in their church, in their mosque, in their, synagogue, at their temple. They might go there and seek out someone only with the guidance that whatever they say is confidential. They say that most men, that if they do go to a doctor, they'd rather not go to the psychiatrist or the psychologist or the therapist, because that implies there's something wrong with you. There's a stigma attached to mental health in this country. It's not just mental health for Black people, but much more so. And actually, just to quote a statistic, that we make up, depending on which census you're looking at, we make up 12 to 14% of the US population, people of color. But we make up 18 to 20% of the people with mental health issues. And those mental health issues can arise from depression because you can't keep a job, depression and anxiety because you're not getting paid enough, or you're being passed over at a job if you got a job, not because you're not qualified, but because you're a person of color. So because we're not advocates for ourselves and go to say, look, this is wrong, or use the system that's put in place, use to go to human resources or to go to the staff association in a particular organization. We don't do those things. So there's so much of us who go into the healthcare system, it's easier to get there, I always say, doing the back door. So the back door would be if you have a relationship with a primary care doctor, because the primary care doctor is not a mental health specialist, you can go and tell him, I'm not feeling well, or I don't sleep as well as I used to, or I'm sleeping too much, or, I just don't feel like going into the job. You can do it that way. And at that time, once you get into that relationship and you realize it's not a stigma. And again, it's how we portray Black men in this society. We portray us as these virile, sex-crazed people who are super strong. I forget, what is it? The Henryism? What is it? What's it called? The hegemonic masculinity profile.
Say that one more time. The who?
hegemonic, Hegemonic. And this is something that was talked about back in the early 1900s, where it's a practice that legitimized men's dominant position in society and justifies the subordination of the common man and women. So have you ever heard of the story of guy John Henry?
Yeah.
The make-believe sort of story of this guy who was big, burly. He did all this work, and worked so hard that he killed himself with work, because he would never stop. He would never wanted to see anybody that he couldn't hammer that nail in, that he couldn't push this or couldn't push that. Well, that same thing exists in the Black culture. And so when you know, and I'm sure you guys have been, you know, if you're playing ball and you fall down and you hurt your elbow, you hurt your knee, you know, if it really, really hurts, you'll know it hurts, but you'll try to figure out a way. And we see this with athletes all the time. They want to go back in. Football, guy gets hit in the head, wants to go back in the game, and is confused as can be, stumbling all over the place, but they'll still try to go, because the machismo, that macho stuff, wants to get you through there. And from a mental health perspective, just think of mental health as in many people's, Black men and young Black men in particular, you don't want people to think that you can't handle what's going on in your life. You don't want people to think that you're having trouble, you know, focusing. You're having trouble. I don't want to eat anymore. You don't want to tell people that. It sometimes it's hard to tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your brother, tell your sister the same thing. So it's got to be doubly hard to go to a complete stranger. And particularly because many times you go to someone, particularly someone who doesn't look like you, they may not understand where you're coming from. They may just, you know, it's no big deal, get over it, move on. Because they believe the same thing you're thinking. You know, so it's very, very real.
So do you have any experience, have you had any experiences when, like, you would get a new patient and they would come in the room and you would walk in the room, they'd be in the room waiting for you, and you'd walk in the room and they'd be like, I'm just waiting for the doctor?
Oh, all the time.
Still?
Not as much anymore. Maybe it's because my hair is whiter now, but but it used to happen all the time. So for instance, because my name is Kennedy, it's less so now because our photos and everything is online.
Yeah.
So they can look you up. But long before all of the social media thing, you'd walk into the room. So best example, when I used to work at the World Bank, the culture was, because it's an international organization, the provider would go out to the waiting room and get the patient, not the nurse. The provider would go and get the patient, because that's custom in other parts of the world.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you go out to get the patient. So of course, these people are used to seeing the doctor come, and, you know, first and foremost, I don't like wearing white coats. So that sort of made me a minor person. So I'd walk out and I'd call a person's name, and they'd come and we walk back. And I'd literally say hi. And I tend not to say, hi, I'm Dr. Kennedy. I say, hi, I'm Richard Kennedy. Nice to meet you. Shake the hand, we go back into the exam room. And literally, I just introduce myself as Richard Kennedy. Mm-hmm. And I'll go in the room and they'll say, when is the doctor coming? Why are you taking this much time talking to me? I said, because I am the doctor. And I've had a couple of people say, "You're joking, right? This is a joke." And I mean, they're looking around as if somebody's punking them. And I say, "No, I'm really the doctor." And you know, I've had Black people say, "You're the first Black person that I've ever seen that's a doctor." That they've only seen white people or Asian people, but not people who look like me. But then, of course, they'll tell you, and I had at Harlem Hospital, I had a Black patient. I was in charge. I was the chief resident, and I was doing rounds with the other interns, medical students from Columbia, and everybody on the team was white except me. And walk into the room, and normally the protocol is the person who admitted the patient is supposed to give me a summary of what they found. Mm-hmm. And then when I go to touch the patient, he said, "You can't touch me. I want that doctor," which was the person he saw. And I said, "Well, I'm in charge." He said, "No, you're not in charge. You're not doing anything for me. Get out of the room." So now, I mean, because it's happened multiple times before in my career, you sort of, you let them go, you let them deal what they want to do. And then, you know, you realize when the dust clears, you're still the person that makes a decision, so you don't get all upset about it. But it comes with the territory that when your belief is that everything white is right and everything Black is not, no matter, even though the circumstances have changed, people will say that. That's in the middle of Harlem. So this is not, that's in 1991, as a matter of fact. It's not like it was that long ago. So so now it's not as hard because people already know, they ask for you, then they come and they make appointments to see you. But people still ask, "Are you sure you're a Kennedy?" You know, and I'm like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, because by your name, no, if no one saw a picture, they wouldn't be able to know whether or not you were white or Black.
Right. They make but they don't, and they make those assumptions. It's normal. It is how we are culturally directed. You know, culturally directed. So I'll give you an experience that happened in medical school. So imagine I'm in medical school. There's 16 minorities in my class of 162. 8 brothers and 8 sisters. Everyone else in the class is white, except for the 2 Vietnamese twins. And the first day of class, you know, we're sitting in this big auditorium. The dean of the school comes in and says, "Welcome to the University of Pittsburgh. You're part of the 2 to 3% of the young, bright minds of America. Wonderful. Great to have you here. We expect great things of you. So go have a good year, work hard, blah, blah, blah." Well, back then they still had affirmative action, as we call it. And so we had a minority dean. And so 3 weeks later, we meet with the 16 of us, meet in a classroom with the minority dean and the same dean of the school, who comes in the room and he starts out his presentation exactly the same. "Welcome to the University of Pittsburgh. You're part of the 2 to 3% of the young, bright minds of America. We welcome you here, but I just want to tell you, the only way y'all are going to get through this school is if you study with your white counterparts, because y'all ain't good enough to do this wrong."
Wow.
Okay, that's 1981.
Wow.
So it's, you know, so it's not that it's not surprising that this would happen. We live in a world that is slow to change. It is really slow to change. But by default, because they make it so difficult, they make us better. You know, they force you just to be on the same playing field. They force you to be better. So indirectly,
more creative, more
yes,
more resourceful,
more creative. You have tougher skin. You work harder. And I always say, no matter what it is that you decide you want to do with your life, if you enjoy something and it gives you joy, if you work at it, it'll not be like work. I mean, you'll succeed, you'll prosper, and you will always, and you'll make your mark. And the reality is, none of us goes through this life without touching others anyway. You know, we all are connected in some way, shape, or form. So it's not surprising.
Just as an open question, so how do we feel Black people in general handle mental health? Like, do you think that we give it as much urgency as it should be given?
I would say before the pandemic started, I'd say no, absolutely not.
No, yeah.
I'd say that because there's a stigma attached to mental health, that, you know, that even if we have a friend or a relative that we think has a mental health, depression or anxiety, you think of them differently. It's, you know, it's, in other words, if you compare having high blood pressure or having diabetes to mental health, nobody thinks of the person in a negative way, or that they're weak, or that there's something wrong with them because they have high blood pressure or diabetes. They think, okay, they got it because maybe there's some family history. They got it because maybe they didn't eat right, or they don't exercise. But with mental health, there's something mentally wrong with you. And so in general, people were reluctant to do it. Now, that being said, women have always been more proactive. So women were always the first ones to take those steps and go forward when they're having trouble, no matter what the health issue is. They're more likely to go and seek help. They're more likely to do investigation and find out, not just seek help, but they'll actually consciously go out and find the right person for themselves. So they just won't randomly pick somebody, say, give me a referral to this one. They'll go and do their own research. To find out, does this person, what I read about this person, does it fit? Or I'll talk to my neighbor, I'll talk to my family member. What do you think about Dr. So-and-so? Can they help out? So but then the pandemic happened. And the pandemic locked us all down. And so for a lot of people, for the first time, having to spend a lot of time with self was really hard. That to be able to see, everybody thought doing, Zoom and WebEx and Teams and all this was great, until you had to spend a lot of time with yourself. And you didn't realize the social network that going to school and going to work had. And so, because people, if you were someone who basically would be sad all the time, you could get around that if you go to the workplace, because there's somebody you had to talk to because you have to interact with them on the job. You could go and have lunch with somebody. You could go and walk in the park, you do all of that. But if you're confined in the four walls of your room and your study or wherever it is, your office, you actually start to think more and more about what's going on with me. And for a lot of people, they didn't like the things that they were finding out. So then what that made is that mental health just has gone through the roof in the aspect that more and more people go out of their way to ask for help. I've had more patients in the last 2 years come in and ask, I need a referral to see a counselor. I need a referral because I've been drinking too much. I need a referral because I don't like who I am. I can't keep a job. I'm failing in school. So people are more active in asking for the assistance now. But prior to that, people they've lost that fear of I'm weak because I'm asking for the help. Now, that being said, young Black men in particular are still more reluctant to ask for assistance. They'll come in, you go and you do the physical, you ask a whole bunch of questions. And everybody that comes into a primary care office, we ask mental health questions. There's a standard set of questions you ask everybody. And people learn if I say A, B, or C, or D, it will get me some of the attention I want. But if I'm not ready to talk about that, I can't sleep at night. Or I think about sometimes taking all those pills that's in my mother's cabinet because they're afraid to talk about it. Less so now. People are more because mental health is, we talk about it much more now. We talk about the effect on children. We talk about the effect on others. So people of color are more apt to ask, but they still want to preferably ask somebody who they think can relate to them. And that is really important. You want somebody who, when they hear me, they understand if I come in and I'm talking a certain slang, that they can, even if they don't understand it, they know how to relate to you so they can get the information so they can help. But, going in and talking to a white man and saying, hey, look, I'm all effed up. I'm a mess, blah, blah, blah. There's a likelihood, there's a possibility that person may say, well, it's not that bad, take 2 of these and come back and see me in a month. So when there's always that negative, and this is based on a lot of the previous experiences one has with the healthcare system. If you feel you've been neglected or sort of been pushed to the side, folks will just, push you to the side. And so then the next time you go, instead of you still standing up and making people hear you, you just go along. There are lots of people who come in and you ask them at the end of the visit, you say, are there any questions you have? Did you understand everything I said? And 9 times out of 10, people say, yeah. And if you ask them 10 minutes later, what just went on, they couldn't tell you. Because they'll tune out.
So when was the last time y'all went to the doctor, Noe and Chris?
Hey, man.
Yeah.
Huh? Noe?
Yep.
Not that long ago.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly when, but it not that long ago.
Actually, probably
More than a year?
Nah.
No.
It wasn't within the year? Within 2022?
It was within the year. Like, it was, yeah. For sure.
Have I gone? I don't think I've gone in 2022 yet. I think I went at the end of 2021, like around November, December.
That sounded about right. Yeah.
Prior to the pandemic, were you going regularly?
For physicals.
Yeah.
Okay. That's impressive.
Yeah.
And that's not because someone made you go. That's because you felt you wanted to do it yourself.
No, I make Chris go.
No, I go.
I make him go.
I
make him go.
Nah, you ain't gotta make me go.
I go. I mean, I make all my appointments. Eyes, doctor, all that. So.
No.
That's good.
and I'll be quick to run up in City MD or something if I don't feel right. I gotta go. Like, I get that from my wife because she, like, as you said, with women, like, they're quick to do something. If my wife wakes up and her toe hurts, she's calling a doctor.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's a different avenue. Women, well, it's partly why women live longer than men across all races.
Yeah, I mean, my remedy for everything is tea. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because Chris is not feeling good right now. And he just get some tea, put a cinnamon stick in there and some ginger.
Man, I got a twitch in my eye. Just give me some tea. I'll take it. Yeah.
Everything is tea related.
Tea. And it does the job, honestly.
Just tells you that what was bothering you was not that serious.
Possibly. So am I. Like,
oh, not possibly. The one thing that over time one learns in medicine is that things that are bad they don't go away, and over time they get worse.
I feel like that could be a life metaphor somehow.
Yeah, it is. It's important to listen to your body. It's important to know as much about your family history as you can, because the genes they cross other places. You know, it's not just what mom and dad gave you, it's what the grandmas and the grandpas gave you too.
Hence the reason why I'm going for my first colonoscopy in 2 weeks.
Hey, round of applause for that. Yeah.
Bravo. Bravo.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care of your colon, people. Take care.
Yeah.
That's important because it's in the family.
Yeah.
I'm one of them.
So what have been y'all experiences with doctors and whatnot in terms of the disparities between Black people's relationship with them and the other side's relationship with them?
Is that question directed to like me and Kyle or
question? Yeah.
I actually had a question similar to that, but I mean, I'll just answer that first. For me, one of the things I noticed is this was recently, maybe about a week or two ago. My wife was going to the doctor for something, and she was trying to find a Black doctor because she feels more comfortable with Black doctors. And she found a doctor. She went, saw her, great, loved her, everything was fantastic. She was looking for a specialist. So she said, hey, so she went somewhere else. She said, can you refer me to, a Black doctor, whatever other, within your network? So she said, oh, sure. She gave her a number where she can, look up all the Black doctors. And when she got the referral, they sent her back to the same doctor. So she was just like, that's so weird. She was just like, it's so hard for people to find Black doctors. And she was just like, I went, she's like, I looked on the website that you gave me. I did a referral. I told them what I was looking for. And they literally sent me back to you. And she was just like, this is not the first time that has happened. She's like, that happens all the time. And this is why people are always saying they can't find Black doctors. Now, I don't know if that's just because if that's a systemic thing or if there really aren't enough Black doctors. I really don't know the answer to that, but it's obviously there aren't enough.
There are so Black women doctors make up 2% of all the doctors in America. Black men doctors make up 3%. And what's changed is that if you go to most of the medical schools now, what you'll see is that Black women, of course, have become ahead of the curve. I'd say that, when I went to medical school, it was probably 70% men, 30% women in my class. Now it's almost the reverse. You go to medical schools now, it's almost 70% women, 30% men. And it's even less for Black men. And one of the things that, so I'm part of this group of doctors around the country. We call ourselves Closing the Gap. And what we're trying to do is for those people interested in medicine who happen to be of color. And we have doctors who are all over the country, and we have every 2 weeks, we have a Zoom meeting to talk about what it's like to be a doctor in medicine, what it's like to be Black in medicine. And because they're all specialists, with cardiologists, urologists, gynecologists, neurosurgeons, everything you can think of. And what we have is we have people who are in medical school. We have, because the medical experience is just as daunting now as it was when I was there. So it's really good sometimes for people to see, and this is, I think, for almost any industry, it's really good to be able to see somebody who looks like you, who does what you want to do, because it becomes more tangible and real. It's no different than the person who wants to be an architect or an engineer or an accountant or a teacher, etc. When you see people who look like you, first of all, it lets you know it can be done. And it has been done before. And so, yeah, so it's not surprising that you know, and most, we're so few as doctors, the Black doctors, in a particular area, we all tend to know each other because there's so few of us.
Be like, oh, you talk about
Yeah.
Greg? Okay, I'm gonna send you over to Greg.
So
I got somebody coming over to you, Greg.
Yes, so we all know. Just it's networking like everybody else does. It's nothing. It's not bad. It's not good. It's the fact. And people realize that when patients have doctors who look like them and can relate to them, they have better relationships. They're more successful with whatever they're going to the doctor for.
That's the truth.
So I guess to piggyback off of that, I kind of have a part A, part B question. I guess from the provider, the physician side, do you notice a difference in care that Black doctors give to Black patients versus white doctors and their interaction with Black patients?
That's a yes and no answer. And so the yes part of it is that in different places I have been, yes, there's a difference between how white people, Asian people treat people of color, and Black people. Now, but I would also tell you, there are Black people who've grown up in completely white neighborhoods who don't see you as the brother or the sister. They see you as a Black person from the white perspective. So you might be treated differently. But most of us as people of color have been treated a certain way throughout our careers, going through the steps that we did to make it. Yeah, I'm a firm believer, and my wife's a doctor. And it's interesting, she has a completely different experience than I have. I've always felt that there have been times in my career where people have reminded me that I'm Black. Not that I'm the doctor, but that I'm Black. And so therefore somehow that is less. But, I'll also say that right now I work in a very multidiscipline practice where there are doctors from every race you can imagine, and all of them treat Black patients the same, with few exceptions. But part of that is because we all hold each other accountable. So you need to be in certain places where people, make people stand up and be honored and respected. I always say that where I work is more like a family than it is a workplace. So I'm fortunate, and I like all the people I work with. I have my differences with different people, but but when you can have open dialogue and you can talk with people without, as they say, wanting to cut everybody's throat or cuss them out, get stuff done. And the focus should always be, in our practices, we're supposed to be here to make the patient experience as good as it can be and to help them in the best way we can. And that starts by the first person they see when they walk in the front door. If that experience at the front door is bad, doesn't matter what I do in the back. Don't matter.
I literally went through that with my wife like 2 weeks ago. She loved the doctor, hated the staff.
The staff is, yep.
Well, yeah. A bad staff can crush.
Make or break that office.
Can crush an office. Crush an office.
I've been ready to cuss few receptionists out because I have a career in doctor visits. Yeah. As you have the career in being a doctor, I have a career in visitation.
Yeah.
I'm a career visitor.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, so it's and again, part of this is, to me, this is always, and I always say, this is something that my mother used to always say. And what made being a doctor really easy for me with all my patients is treat everybody in front of you as if I was the one in front of you and how you want me to be treated. That made it easy. Because you don't have to think about it. Because there's no way you want your mom to be treated badly or poorly. And it's not to say, look, there's some patients who challenge you. They got a lot.
So
they're a lot. And so, but that doesn't change things. And once you have a relationship where the two of you are on the same page, you'd be surprised how much can be accomplished. Even if the information and the result is going to be some bad news, you'd be surprised at what can be accomplished.
No, so you had a second question, right?
The part B of that is, I guess, is the patients. In your experience with patients, Black patients in particular, have they expressed to you, their difficulty with, white doctors, Asian doctors, those that are not, of the colored persuasion?
Oh yeah. Many of them don't, as they say, be more specific. But what they will do is tell you, and they won't tell you at the beginning of the visit. They won't tell you in the middle of the visit, just that the visit is about to be over. And so, for instance, in our practice, the patients select the provider that they want. And normally the provider either says yay or nay to accepting that person as part of their practice. And at the end of the visits, I've had people say to me, you're the first one who's taken this much time to actually listen to me. There's sometimes I say to myself, that's shocking to me, because I know other people that do exactly what I do. And I hear of it. And just like everything else in this world, we all get rated on stuff. And they always have these random sort of patient surveys that they ask them to do after their visits.
I think that's probably what gets on my nerves now. It's like everything is so, well, how was our experience? How was your experience? They more so are trying to get the reviews as
Right.
opposed to
Right. And see, so when you do that, when you spend time having people dot I's and cross T's instead of taking care of the person in front of them, it's not going to be a good experience. And people, particularly with social media, people could ruin you.
Yep.
And I mean ruin you with
Yep.
just a few words. Because what normally happens, one person puts it out there, and then there's like 30,000 other people who've had the same experience with you, but forgot about it, or just moved on, or just went and did something else. And they come out of the woodwork. And in a large organization, it's no longer just about you. If it's bad, it also is a reflection on the organization. So then you got to explain yourself to management too. So I think that, patients who've had really bad experiences tell you upfront. I've had people walk in and say, look, I've had bad experiences with Dr. So-and-so, or this doctor didn't listen to me. And I want to know upfront, are you going to be able to listen to me? Almost as if it's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I look at it like this. And I think one of the best things that happens to providers is that we become a patient. Because when we're a patient, and particularly if they don't know what we do or who we are, other than I'm Mr. So-and-so, you actually really understand when patients come in and say, look, that front desk person, because you end up having the same experience when you deal with their front desk person.
Mm-hmm.
So
Like they doing you a favor.
Yeah.
By
Oh yeah.
checking you in.
So there's look, medicine's got its growing pains like every other industry. The dilemma is that the patients are the fulcrum for it, and we always need to be doing a better job. There's no question about that. We always need to be doing it better. And patients can make us accountable. You can do it because, if you yell and scream and cuss and holler at the front desk, even though the person might be justified because everybody talks about it, by the time you get to the room with the provider, not necessarily that they're on the defensive, but they're almost waiting for you to go on at them too.
Mm-hmm.
But invariably, by the time the patient comes in the room with us, they're chilled until you dismiss them in their view.
Anytime there's a medical, I've always reached out because I want to know if I'm getting the right information, because I don't know if the doctor's just looking at me as another little nigger girl. And
Sure.
So I'm always leery when I go meet a doctor for the first time.
Stay tuned for scenes from the next episode of Up for Debate.
My
Just
pleasure.
real quick, from a medical standpoint, how important do you think your weenus is to the human body? Is that an important body?
It's amazingly important.
See? Told you.